All right, no more heat talk here right now.
Dude,
You won't see that in my training peaks, buddy.
I walked outside today and I was like, man, I might need to like drag out the old jacket. I mean, we're still in July, but it feels well, at least here it does. It feels unbelievable outside. It's in the 70s, gonna be like that for the next few days. I know quite a few people are getting a little bit of a nice little bit of a cold front, which is nice as you're building up your resistance to the warmer temps and getting ready for your races. But it is July 31st, the year 2025. Welcome everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast. This is episode 866.
Yes, sir. I actually put the hoodie on, walked down to the beach today, stared out at the water like old man in the sea, and just soaked it in. But boy, I could barely breathe. The air quality.
Well, I'm telling you, and I mean, we're gonna talk again about Wisconsin today, but like we talked about it Tuesday about I think that's also why people tend to love that venue and that course. Once because it's a hoodie and shorts kind of place in the venue. Yeah, it can get a good bit warm, but a lot of people are, whether they're coming from around the area or not, it's kind of like usually one of the first cooler weekends. It just tell you, it makes you happier. It's like the first day of spring, like you get like legit weather. You've been inside for the last 2 months. It's blistering cold outside. The wind's high. You've had a lot of snow, and you're just like waiting to see sunshine. You don't see anybody walking down the street. You don't see anybody out doing anything. And all of a sudden, you get the first like sunny, like mid 50s, 60s day, and it's like everybody comes out of their house like a bunch of like termites and roaches. They're like, we're out here doing stuff. It just people are just in a generally better mood when the temperature range is in like that, 60 to 75 range. So it just makes you appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah, Wisconsin does have that early September feel, and it does. It's just crisp, and it does make you feel alive, man. I mean,
just makes you happy.
Yeah, it feels lighter outside, and you always get it's a football weekend.
Yeah,
the farmers market's on. Everybody's just kind of out, and it's just normally, and like I've been up there every year since 2013 for the race, and we had one bad weekend of weather. But
dude, it's money, and like I'm telling you, it's funny. We always kind of say this, and we've joked about this like the last 8 years. Usually, when we think we put out like a really good podcast, we get like the worst feedback ever. Yeah. And like when we do, and we're like, man, we kind of roughed our way through. That was kind of rough. We get like 25 emails. That hit home. You really hit me today. It's like just what I needed to hear. And Tuesday, we just as usual, we just kind of like went with the flow and got like tons of amazing feedback about it, and like I got like great emails and text messages and Facebook message, people trying to slide into the old DMs about Wisconsin and just not the course. But so it got me thinking like, hey, it might be a good obviously like you got people just for the nature of the the beast now is like some people are already looking at next year. Yeah, you got like what we're going to go over today isn't necessarily anything you'd want to adjust like going into race this year, but I think when you talk about these race venues and these courses and the demands of the course, and we kind of got into, strengths and weaknesses and what you like. I got a message from an athlete, that day that's like, hey, I listened to your podcast today. What do you think would be the best course for me? And they're an athlete that loves to run. It's always the one that they stick with the most. Not overly consistent throughout the year, or kind of goes through periods of being super consistent and sometimes not as consistent. And I would say more of a natural swimmer than they are a cyclist and a runner. But if one's going to give and one's going to go away, they'll just fight cycling to the T. And I said, you should do California because the swim is pretty, pretty much, down river. It's going to be fast or it's going to be easy. So you're going to stick that. The bike course is going to be, again, not a walk in the park. It's 112 miles, still 112 miles, but it'll be a little bit easier to manage because of the easier swim. You're going to go into it with an energy surplus, not surplus, but more of an energy surplus than you would have gone into it, had it been a harder swim. And then you like to run, and it's a run race. And so like going back to thinking about Wisconsin, I thought like we could kind of pull back the layers a little bit, like, things to look for if you're coaching yourself, or you're looking for a training plan, or you're looking for a coach that's familiar with the course. Like there's there's different ways to train for different courses, and the demands you might give somebody for a course like Wisconsin, kind of going back to what I just said about a course like California, is a lot different. Because honestly, like a course like California, I generally think, like, honestly, you could be in really, really good 70.3 shape, like I'm pretty fast, and then put in like a good 6 to 7 week block and you're ready to rock and roll for the full. But of course, like Wisconsin, you have to not almost be, but you need to be as consistent as you possibly can year round. Not year round, but I mean, from the longest way out you can possibly wrap your brain around being consistent, you need to be consistent, because it is such a strong, sturdy, course. It is about raising your level of durability, not just from like, durability when it comes to like, what the power you can put off at the end of your 112 miles into that run, or even in the swim. It's also about just, having a sturdy body, and like that comes with time. It doesn't come overnight. It's like the laughable Garmin race predictor. Like, you go out and run your best 5K and it's like, hey, your new marathon PR is going to be 2:47. And you're like, I haven't ran over 6 miles in 7.5 years. Right. So you can have the speed, but if you don't have the durability, by the time you get to, the time where it matters, like, it's just going to be irrelevant. And so I think, like, looking at a course like this, I mean, you've done it, not that many people have probably done it more than you've done it. I've done it and coached tons of athletes on the course. We both have, but it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I think, again, the timing is great, but it's also like a course that presents its unique challenges and how you train athletes. So I think it might be fun to kind of like peel back. I'll probably pull up like a week of someone that I've worked with in the past, not this year, but in the past, like how a standard week might look like as you're kind of like entering the build, and then like why it looks that way because of the course, and like considerations going into it, things that you really want to like focus on, like, for example, in a course like Ironman Florida, if you want to be inside most of the time, you can probably get away with it, because you need to be an aero all the time. Like, because honestly, like the biggest deterrent for me to do a race like Florida is I don't want to be in my TT bars for 5 hours straight. Yeah. Like I like to sit. I know you're the same way, right? It's like you'd love to test yourself on one of these fast courses, but I can't see you being in TT for 5 hours and never getting up. You kind of like the grind and the turns and stuff like that. So, that's a different story versus like needing to cycle a lot and making sure that like these hills don't, it's kind of like, a boxer ignoring, having like a really ripped, like, chiseled muscular six pack. They got a huge chest and a huge swing, but like if you come in and you got body shot over body shot over body, you can just totally break them down. And you can break a rib and they're done. So and then that's how I feel about the Wisconsin courts and why training for that and things like Lake Placid, Old School Coeur d'Alene, and some of the challenging, courses, you just have to train your athletes differently than you would if it was not a softer course, but a course where you're going to probably going a little bit quicker and you're not going to be taking as many, uppercuts and jabs.
Yeah, I suppose in some ways it's a little bit like Kona and Nice difference. Mm-hmm. It's funny you mentioned that about, like, I felt the same way when we got done with the cast. I was like, I don't even really know, just kind of like meandering through it and stuff like that. But yeah, like I feel like half my athletes texted me and said they're thinking about Wisconsin next year now because of the cast. And I was like, what? What do we even say? In fact, I think you said, sorry to, kind of make this seem like not a great race to do, but, or whatever. Maybe that was the point, is it's like, oh, that does sound like a challenge that I might be up for. But yeah, I mean, it is really one of those things where, the durability and the strength and really, I guess, like you're saying, it's almost like you got to get ahead of your base a little bit more, because it is something that could wear down, with the pounding and the grinding and the whole 9 yards like that. Thinking back to when I first started doing this, we were living in Nashville, and it turns out Nashville's a really great training ground for Wisconsin, especially going out to the Trace, and it's just everywhere you go out there, there's hills and for running and everything. So that really worked out good. It's better than I had no idea. And then plus we would always go out to the lake, and that was back in Mastodon days, and really kind of bump and grind out there and really get after it, and a lot of open water stuff. And it's interesting to think about it that way. I do think about like a being up and really dialed in, kind of like tuned up for a 70.3, and then getting into one of those courses like Florida or something, or California, and how that would make sense, because it's really about being able to keep going, it's like, and that's always been the hardest. That's why, I mean, honestly, that's why I feel like those courses in a way seem harder to me, just because, like you said, I'm not a big, like, sit in aero and just stay at a certain power kind of thing. I need variety. And, I think I was watching this thing on Pogača last night again. I'm kind of obsessed with that guy, clearly. But
dude, you are becoming like. Am I going to see you? Are you going to change your Facebook profile picture to Tadej Pogača?
No, I don't think so. But I did this thing. I didn't realize this, but he has a watch sponsor. Did you know this? That watch he rides with is like $150,000, $200,000 watch. It's like
what?
Yeah, it's some crazy, like, super elite kind of like wealthy rich people watch, but it's like real light, and it's carbon, and it's just a watch. It kind of doesn't. It looks like like a souped up Swatch or something, but I guess he rides with that in his races. And it's more of a fashion piece than anything. And he's just good enough that it doesn't matter. But anyway, what was I saying about, like, he, in his warm-ups and shit, he's just like really, like, just cranking it all out, but yeah, as far as like doing a fast, like a flat race like that. And it's sort of like, I think about it in terms of, I need some variety, man. I'm, and these guys, they will. I mean, like, this is one of the interesting things about watching the Tour de France, is how much they just actually step on it and then kind of settle back in, It's sort of this, a lot of guys in the peloton obviously are just kind of cruising along, but it's wild to me how they can kind of, like, it's almost like they have to come out of their shell a little bit here and there to stay sharp over the course of 4 hours or whatever like that. So that's kind of always I thought about Wisconsin. It's like, sometimes, yeah, I know we want to keep our normalized and average power as close as possible, but sometimes I just feel like I got to step on it. I don't know. And it wakes me up or something. But that consistent, staying in aero for a long ass time and just cruising along at whatever, 19 miles an hour, same power, that shit just wears me out, man.
Yeah, it's a mental grind. I think, like, again, like, that goes back to kind of what we said on Tuesday about, you don't need to understand, who you are physically, right? Everybody's like in, muscle, muscle fiber type, what kind of person you are, and, profiling, and like what, kind of best, the best courses for the best horses. But to me, like, a lot of it just comes from, like, the chin up, like, what are you willing to train the most for, and what can you buy in the most? And that's honestly what you should lead into. Like, if you hate being on the trainer and you don't want to spend that, then don't sign up for a race where you got to be an aero for fucking forever. Like, and I think a lot of times, again, like, we get dragged into these FOMOs, but it's like, if you're not willing to do the work for the race that you signed up for because you're so resistant to it, like being the trainer forever, or getting outside and riding hills, or exposing yourself to, like, getting some open water swims like Wisconsin, like, if you're not willing to do that, then you have to be willing to accept a certain level of performance decrease. And I think that's just the reality of it. Like, so going into, like, maybe the differences, that's probably I'll probably do is, like, go into a difference of, like, for, training for, Ironman Wisconsin versus, I'll just use California, when you got, they're both 2.4 miles, they're both in water. You're like, what could be different? Right. I should probably, I should probably train with these exactly, the same way, and to me, it's always like, well, first off, you need to swim a shit ton. That's number one. And I still think people don't swim enough. You see it all the time. And I know most of our athletes are like, we probably swim too much. But if you're doing Wisconsin, I'm going to tell you right now, you'll know you swam enough at Wisconsin if you're running up the helix. If you're not running up the helix, you didn't swim enough. You should get out of that water like you did nothing. So like again, California is point to point. It's downriver, not much going on. You're not going to be surrounded. Again, you're also not going to be surrounded by people. Yes, there's no mass start, but on that second loop, it might as well be a mass start. I mean, you look at it from the top of the terrace, and it is just like, it's like one big mosh pit in the water. It's fantastic to watch. I'm like, but why aren't we doing the mass start again? So like on a course like Wisconsin, you got to put in you got to be upper body. I mean, for all Ironman stuff, you want to be upper body focused anyway. You're going to be in a wetsuit for probably both of them. But for Wisconsin, obviously you're going to be in a wetsuit, but you really, really, really want to save those legs as much as possible. You're going to be on course longer than California, and you're going to be you're going to have a lot more surges than you would in California. Right, the surges take it. You're talking about you keeping your average power and normalized power as close together as possible, right? But also like knowing that there are going to be points where you're going to have to surge either around people or up the hills. So you're going to have like, again, not a change in performance, but your normalized power is a physiological effect on your legs and your body. Average power is the speed that you get. So the further that is from AP to NP, the bigger, the more loss you're having versus, to your gain in miles per hour. Like of course, like California, you can just set it and forget it. Yes, you're going to have wind. Yes, you're going to have turns. That might change, but still, you can still stay steady in the wind and steady in the tailwind. You just change gears. But Wisconsin with the inclines and especially, and I think this is a part that people really misunderstand about a course like Wisconsin when they talk about, how you should train is I'm still adding in, not a ton, but like some like really big bursts. And you hear this a lot with, training methodology. Oh, well, it's Ironman training. You should never be doing like, high burst training and, like 30, 45 second minutes, not all out, but like over, producing a lot of lactate. And I'm like, well, what do you think a course like Wisconsin's going to do to you? You think you're just going to coast into these and coast out of the turns? No, whether you want to or not, whether you're trying to hold back or not, your tendency is going to be, brakes, turn, reaccelerate. So if you don't train your body to reaccelerate and pick up the power to get back up to speed, you're just choosing to lose time. And versus California, so like coming out of the swim or Wisconsin, you have to feel like you did nothing. Your 2.4 has to feel like basically it's just going to be annoying because you had to get wet before your 112. So you're looking at tons of paddle, tons of pool buoy, 500, 600, working yourself up to 800, and then for Wisconsin, I'm keeping at least 3 swims a week, encouraging you to do an open water swim if you can get to it, like maybe on a Sunday. And that's going to be all the way up to race day for the most part. But California, if you're a pretty good swimmer, the last 5 to 6 weeks, I might even take you down to 2 swims because you're just not going to be in the water that long. And the time you're in the water, you're not having to do the same thing. I mean, just take 2 loops of the Wisconsin course where you don't get downstream assisted and you're having to swim around more people and kind of muscle with you. Because again, like talking about coming in and out of turns for Wisconsin on the bike course, it's no different than the amount of traffic you have to navigate on a course that's 2 loops.
It can be choppy too.
Exactly. Like it's probably going to be choppy. And even if it starts out flat, the second loop's going to feel like you're in a washing machine, right? So the amount of effort and energy, we talk a lot about, even if it's a flat course, right? Like the amount of extra energy, mental energy and effort it takes to be around people for the first time on like a group ride or a race and you've ridden inside all day or all winter or all year, it takes its toll on you because you have to pay the fuck attention finally. You can't just ride inside and, and have 3 screens up and not pay attention. It takes out of you. So like on the swim, having to just navigate in and around people, you're not able to swim a straight line. I'm not sure what my deal is with F-bombs. I'll try to tone it down a little bit, but you're not going to swim 2.4. I don't care how straight of a swimmer you swim or you're able to swim, you're not going to swim 2.4. You're going to swim over that. And it's going to take extra effort to get in and around, but you're also going to have to sight a lot more. And I don't think people understand, like if you're out of shape swimming and you have to look up every 3 to 4 to 5 strokes to make sure you're going in the right direction. You don't have upper body fitness and strength to do that. It's gonna start to chip away. It's gonna start with your arms. It's gonna then go to your neck. It's gonna go to your lower back and your core. And you're gonna be 45 miles in your bike ride and think like, God, why is my lower back sore? It's because you don't ever swim. And now you're having to sight and raise your neck up every 4 to 6 things to make sure you're heading the right direction. And then to make sure you can get around the person in front of you, putting extra effort in, doing surges, swimming over people. Like, you need some muscle on that. And so if you're only doing like soft 50s and easy straight through like 25 3K swims, or doing 25s all out, like those are important. But at some point, like that second loop, you better be stout. You better consider yourself to be a stout open water swimmer that's got no problem raising themselves up out of the water. Because again, when you think about swimming, it's not just your eyes that come out of the water. In order to raise your body up high enough in the water, you need to use your arms and your catch and your upper body to raise yourself up. It's not just like a flick of the neck. And that takes extra effort. So the more you have to sight, the more effort is, which means, again, the more you're going to become fatigued. So it is like, again, like that's why it's such a fatigue. It's all about fatigue resistance. How long can I handle these? Can I make it feel like nothing? And this is like doing it day in and day out, for these athletes. And while like it's still, again, super important to do, 50s and hundreds, but you got to start doing, really, really longer swims. That are over 4K, sometimes up to 5K, 5,500 for some athletes. And, I would also work on like, your breathing control, being able to breathe, and hold your breath if you need to, because sometimes like your breathing pattern is going to be messed up. And it's just like, you take a course like California, very little navigation, point to point. You're not going to be surrounded by people because you don't have to ever cross over paths with them again. And it's not going to be as quick because it's just like, you jump in the water and then you go. Just like Chattanooga, it's a straight shot. You're saving energy. You're not putting as much effort and you're in the water less time. Then you're getting on the bike course like California, which is, again, a lot easier like Florida, like Arizona than it is for Wisconsin. So if you just ignore it and go into that, I honestly, like if I'm a coach and I'm programming Wisconsin, I'm programming swim, bike, heavy all day, every day. Because you can focus on the run if you want to, but if your swimming and cycling isn't there, your run is irrelevant, right? Mm-hmm. It's irrelevant. Your energy is going to be completely depleted, and those, again, like that's just the swim. And then you've done it, way more times than I have. I think I remember like the 1 year that I did it, with the year you and I did it, I think I was 58 minutes in the water that year. Top 50, I think, overall. I did 95% of all my swimming with pool buoy and paddles. All just working it up top, being as strong as I possibly could, putting in 4,500 5K swims when I was able to get to the pool. It's just, again, like it's just a strong swim. And I think it's just, again, like starting off the race like that, everybody's going to blame their cycling and their running because no one wants to blame their swim, because that means they have to actually go swim again. But that's where it all starts. And a course like that, again, versus a course like California, it's, California is just an inconvenience because you're getting wet and floating down the river. A course like Wisconsin, you're racing from the second stroke, or you're fighting from the second stroke.
Yeah. That's really interesting, man. You got, longer swims, stronger swims. And because it is one of those things where, I feel like sometimes I've done it right and sometimes I haven't. And you get to like you're saying, man, you can get kind of through one loop and kind of be on the bike and just be like, damn, man, my upper body is just crushed right now. It's not really too much of the leg problem at that point, but then I get in there and then my legs, your legs obviously weaken, and then the saddle pain that comes with that. It's just like you're just a little bit like falling down on the seat, and it's just not as your core can't engage as much, your back's hurting, like you're saying, your arms and shoulders, all that kind of stuff comes into play, and that just makes that bike course even tougher. And you're absolutely right, man. It's just it is weird to think about, because it's always like it's, we always talk about it's all about the run, but it's so obvious. And we talk about this all the time, and I think about it all the time, and I still don't. You're always like, well, I could ride some more, but I got to get some runs in. And then you get off that bike, and then your run is just like absolutely worthless. And then it's all about just mental fortitude a lot of times. It's so funny when I'm out on that course. I've done it, I don't know, 6 times, 7 times. But yeah, it's sort of like you get done with that second bike loop, and then I just sort of watch people, and because I know how I feel when you get back to you think you're done with the 2 loop, you're done with the 2 loops, and you get to that stick, and I see people's faces, man. It's like you still got 17 miles of grind left, and you think you're kind of done in a way because you're done with the loop, but then it's just like, to me, it's always that stick that just throws the nail in the coffin, man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a sign, or it just shows you what kind of, like you're saying, upper body shape you really need to be in, and how many hills and just big gear grinds that you got to be training with. And it's just that, but that's why I love it. But it's just, to me, it seems like a big mystery a lot of times to be able to figure that course out. And obviously some people race it very well, but it's just it's kind of a muddy situation out there. There's not
you nailed it, and I didn't even think about that, but it's so true, because it does throw so much at you, and there are so many ways to go about it. You're like, man, like I wonder if I even if you go out there and you race your best, I think everyone's left thinking, this is every race, right? For triathletes, like the the most popular, word used in the post-race, chow down tent is but. Yeah, I had a great race, but, I had a bit of but. And you're always making excuses, or trying to find, you do the course, you're like, yeah, I really could have, done this. Cause there's so much to take into account. And I love what you said there. I mean, I've referenced it a few times, but one of the first 30, 40 podcasts we ever did, I talked about a study that was done on arm fatigue and how it raises your leg RPE. And meaning if for cyclists, the study was basically these cyclists did a time trial, with completely fresh, and then did a time trial after they did a bunch of arm exercises. So nothing that affected their legs, nothing. Mm-hmm. But they fatigued their arms to a point to where it actually raised their level of RPE and the effort and the power they were trying to put out on their legs. And that was one of the first light bulb moments for me as a coach. I was like, golly, if that's got to be, that makes a ton of sense to me just from a position standpoint. But especially when you think about, triathlon, not just TT cyclists, but triathletes who have to swim beforehand and how fatigued they are. If your swim arms are not in shape, then you're going to be having a high, and that's why you see people sitting up every 2 seconds, shaking their arms out. It's they're completely weak. And you need that to, do this kind of semi-important thing called steer your bike too, mm-hmm. right? And handle. And that's even more important, of course, Wisconsin. And so when you think about the loss of power, the rise in RPE from your arm fatigue, it all stacks up. And then you go into the bike course and you're thinking, all right, how am I going to attack this? It's not a course where you're probably, looking to set, land speed records, for, again, based on your full performance potentials because of the profile and elevation of the race. But big gear, 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 big gear. I mean, there have been points and times where I've thought I wonder if I give an athlete just big gear work for all their intensity, how they would fare. For a course like Wisconsin, because that's what you're going to find. Even if you're I'm going to change up my cassette, I'm going to change up my chain ring, I'm going to go to shorter cranks, you're still going to be grinding it out. And that is the body shot combo that your legs, it's because everyone says the same thing. And not everyone, but you see big gear workouts. So with big gear workouts, talking about low cadence, you're talking about torque work. So lower cadence, higher power. It's strength work for your legs, and it also helps maintain a lower VLA max, your lactate production rate, and it also keeps your heart rate low. So it's a great way to get intensity without overly stressing your body. But it's one of those paper workouts where on paper you're that's not that bad. And let's say you got 6 intervals of 5 minute, at, mid to high zone 3, 50 to 55, 60 cadence, maybe even down to 45, depending on how, well trained you are. You're that doesn't look that bad. In the first 2 intervals, you're God, my heart rate isn't even that high. This isn't really a big deal. And then the fourth one, you're oh shit, right? It's like, you're doing 5 reps of 5 in squats. The first 3 you're like, I got this. And then you're like the fourth and fifth, you're like, ooh, like I'm barely making it. Like it just grinds it out of you, which is a trick, right? Because from a cardiovascular standpoint, you're not doing 4 or 5 minutes at threshold where it's your heart rate that's usually the cap, right? Or the ceiling. Your legs are keeping up there at a higher RPM, which is what you need to generate higher power. VO2 max, where it's like your heart rate is the limiter factor. It's just it's your legs, and it's just that grind and that muscle, and then you do it, and that is Wisconsin. That was also old school Louisville. It was just like boom. It wasn't uppercuts, like it wasn't a long climb like Placid or Coeur d'Alene. It was just like punch, rest, punch, rest. And it just takes it out of you. And then you get to the point to where you can't even capitalize on some of the downhills because you're going punch, rest instead of punch, pedal. And I think that's just like, again, like when you look at, it is like, I think Wisconsin and like Placid, those are the 2 courses that I generally will program like the most riding, like overall bike volume than most. It's like you might get a ride on Tuesday, a ride on Thursday, a ride on Saturday, and a ride on Sunday. Mm-hmm. It's like Saturday might be, 5 to, again, like this is like the last little bit of your training, but like you might have a 5.5 hour ride on a Saturday and then a PM run. And then the next morning, I still might have you get in like a little, a run early in the morning, something under maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then get you back on the bike for a longer, easy endurance ride. And the beauty of that with a course like Wisconsin is that, if you look at how it's stacked up, you're getting in, so like, let's just break down like a 3-day block for like a course like Wisconsin. So a Friday swim, it's probably going to be to save your legs for the weekend and mimic the focus of the race. Like a Friday swim might be super long, like, and I say super long, like 4,500 5K, all upper body. So we're just going to fatigue the arms, but we're going to rest the legs a little bit. And then Saturday you might get up and you might do, again, depending on where you are on your training cycle, you might do a 5.5 hour, sometimes 6, depending on the athlete, like 6 hour, bike effort. And then I'm gonna have you run in the PM. So you probably didn't check off 112 miles that day unless, you rode like something like really, really flat and you're pretty fast, and then have you run, maybe 40, 45 minutes in the PM. So it's not a brick run. It's just an extra run in the evening. And then the next morning, maybe like an hour and a half run with some speed, and then hop off that run and then immediately hop on and do like a 3 to 4 hour bike ride. All easy. We're just like pressure on the pedals the whole time. We're not coasting. So if you look at like that 3-day block, you got in close to a 2-hour run, which isn't going to be, your 26.2. You got in way over the mileage in riding and over the mileage in swimming. But the run was still pretty quality. So, and a lot of times, and this is one of my favorite things to do, is you can insert a long run followed by a bike ride, or even a long run followed by a swim. And it doesn't mimic the stress on your bones, ligaments, and tendons that a long run would. But from a cardiovascular, like in muscular standpoint, it also does the job. And that to me is like what the course is about. Like if you can get off that bike looking fresh, it's like there's like 2 checkpoints in looking at someone when you're on course. I mean, all races, but like the 2 checkpoints you look at. How do you look coming out of the water? How do you look coming off the bike? What's your stride look like? What's your persona look like? What your eyes look like? What your face look like? You covered in salt, or you already smoked, or you kind of like give that like, hey, like I'm about to get screwed for 26.2. Like you want to get off fresh. And so like while I get it, and while like people put so much focus on, and again, it's different for athletes, so much focus on these like insanely ridiculous long runs that leave most people shelled for 3 days. Like I'd rather, give me, if you had a choice between give me an average cyclist and a below average swimmer, but a great marathoner, or give me a great swimmer and a solid cyclist and a solid half marathoner, give me that person. Because that solid half marathoner is going to come off the bike completely fresh. And they should be good to go at like their normal like half marathon pace in and around it, at least up until 18. 15, 18, you're good to go. And then you can manage the rest. Versus the great marathoner they're not going to be worth anything probably after the swim. And then it's just, again, like if you think about, we always talk about fatigue masks fitness. Well, hello, if you come into the bike fatigue from the swim, guess what's going to get masked? Your fitness. And if you're trying to keep up with numbers you thought you would get fresh, but you haven't swam enough, then guess what? Your fatigue is going to mask your fitness on the bike. You're going to force it, and then come the run, and you're just going to be, your greatest memory is going to be the conversations you have on that back trail by the lake on campus, talking about how great your bike split was and how you need to do more track work while you're walking with the headlamp, and neon lights wrapped around your neck. But it's just like those, and that's completely opposite from what, a training for like a California or a Florida, might look like. You probably don't need double rides. You need a lot of runs because you are going to be running, wanting to run at a much quicker, faster, higher pace. You're going to need to be able to do that versus, Wisconsin. Yeah, you want to be able to run fast, but it's different on how you get there. And I think that's, again, like when you look at how you program, or, these like cookie cutter off the shelf training plans that people get, like they're very few like race specific. It's all about energy and demands, and it all starts, again at the beginning, but then how you go into the bike, and you've done it, 7 times now, and I bet you like you've probably paced it differently. I remember the first one you did, like, you got lucky, right? Because then you couldn't use one of your chain rings or something, like you ended up having to spin out everything.
Yeah, I couldn't. My derailleur wouldn't let me go in my big ring. It kept. It's possibly user error on some of it, but I ended up riding that whole thing in my little ring. And like I said, I think it saved my run more than anything, because you're right. I had to spin out. I got over the hills and I just couldn't hammer too much. I'd get over the hill, and get into it really well. And, you can, that's the other thing about that course is the speed is out there if you want to take it and you're a good handler and all that other stuff. So that's the only thing I can surmise from that ride is that I just really was aggressive on over the hills and getting into the downhills, and then pretty aggressive on my cornering and stuff like that. But, yeah, man, when you were talking, I love because I do that too with the double rides and, kind of mix in that whole weekend and kind of turn it into sort of this hodgepodgey thing that's kind of close to, some really solid volume, close to the race. But to me, like those, that double ride, a lot of times nobody wants to do it. I mean, you probably have just the same type of response that I do sometimes, especially if you go like 4 and 4. But like a lot of times I'll go 4 and 2.5, or just to get them, because to me it's like it's almost like those double runs are similar in the sense like I got to go out. And that feeling you get when you start is the one that is so important to be able to overcome. Because like getting on the bike after a long ride on Saturday and going back out Sunday and getting back on the bike, to me, it's a lot of like working through how you feel. And to me, that's the understated point of that, as far as, because that's how you're going to feel at the end of that ride. You know what I mean?
Oh, so, yeah, it's the T2 to first 5K feeling. Like, what the hell am I doing? And do I really want to do this? And why did I sign up?
Exactly. Yeah. So how do you patiently work and maneuver your way through that feeling to get it done? Yeah.
It's and especially with again, like the length of the day and how you're training for it. Like, yeah, like you want to have, you want to be really, really, really fit, but you want to feel the least fatigued too. Like, and I think and yes, fitness allows that, right? Pacing allows that, execution allows that, but it's also just like, what kind of machine are you trying to build? Are you going to, spend some extra money on aero gains, for a course like Wisconsin, or some time in the tunnel, or we do that for like Florida, we're going to be slippery and you might be like an hour difference or maybe even more, but there's speed to be had, but it's in, maybe going out to a parking lot and putting cones out, right? Learning how to corner, keep speed, when to actually, feather the brakes, and when to, not feather the brakes, and when to just kind of take that speed up, and how to take speed after it. And again, it's like, it's all those little, because it's funny, right? You hear athletes on like these flatter courses with it's like, I had to surge extra hard, and I think it really took it out of me. Yeah, well, think about racing a hilly course where you got to start, stop, accelerate, brake, uphill, downhill, turn left, right, big gear, change ring. It's like you're That's all it is. And so finding like the way to smooth that out and to do that, like you're sure not going to find that in ERG mode on the trainer. Like you got to find ways to smooth that out and pedal through and power through corners, how to take corners, how to maintain speed so you're not going, 0 watts to zone 4 and then back again. Like you're just accumulating so much fatigue in your legs. So you can train that, either by just training it, in your interval work, which again is it's something I think like a lot of people don't consider and think about when when they're just like mimicking intervals, is even sometimes just like mimicking how you feel like the race is gonna, unfold and feel. It's great, not even outside of like a physiological standpoint, but just from like a psychological standpoint, to know that you can do that and you can withstand that gives you a tremendous amount of confidence. And like that could even look something like, if you're doing a 5.5 hour ride and you're prepping for Wisconsin, your first 30 to 45 minutes is TT position only. The middle, 3.5-4 hours is like, big gear work with a little bit of TT. And then the last 45 minutes is straight TT position. Like, can you hold a TT position the last 25 miles, probably into a headwind that's a little bit flatter after you're fatigued and after you're shredded? Can you do that? Or, because to me, that tells me like, how's my nutrition? How is my pacing? Where is my power at? Is my bike fit, on point? Because like a course like Wisconsin, you don't want to be overly aggressive. You want to have max power in all different positions to be comfortable enough to hold whatever that TT position looks like for the last 20-25 miles. If not, maybe you need to change things up. And I do think like, especially if you're worried and you don't, for these people who don't swim a lot, like you never hear a lot of people doing swim to bike bricks, but oh dear God, do people love bike runs? You got to have them, got to do them all day, every day. Like, got to have those brick runs, man. I'm never going to run well. Well, I'd love to see how your bike ride works out after you go swim a 2.4, where you got to fight through it. So test those things out if you feel like you need to and you don't swim a lot and you don't have availability to swim a ton. Instead of going out and doing your bike ride and your brick run, which everybody and their mother seems to love to post about in their little closed Facebook group, is why don't you head to the pool, take your bike with you, lock it up in the car, go in, swim an easy 2K, and then swim tempo for 2,500, and then get out and go ride and see how it affects you. Can you hold aero? Are your arms wiped? Is it affecting your legs? What's that power feel like then? But no one wants to do those things. But they want to do it again, like from a logistical point, that is tougher. Like, I get that. I 100% get that. But that's all about like, again, you needed that for California to, for a Florida, or Florida's different because it could be, white caps and rough seas. But for a California, like, yeah, I mean, you don't need to do that. You could probably swim 2K for 30 minutes and be like, yeah, feels pretty similar. And then, coming off, like, how are the legs going to feel? And again, like the run training has to be there, but, I'd want to feel pretty fast and be able to run fast. It's not an easy run, but it's not the hardest. Like, it's not like like a Chattanooga or like Placid, like that I consider pretty tough runs. It's probably not going to be overly hot, so it's like, hey, like I just need to be able to come off that bike really, really fresh. And then it's just a numbers game in your training of like, what do I need to shift the focus on more or less as we get closer to race day? If I'm going to present 3 cakes, we always talk about building like the foundation and the base of the cake and then putting the icing on, closer to race day. Like what, if I've got a swim cake, a bike cake, and a run cake, like which one do I need the most icing on? Which one's gonna really determine how this goes? And a lot of people come into this with like, barely even a base layer of their swim cake, what they think is probably a great cake with maybe a little bit of icing on their bike, and then, the run cake is where they max out on. But if everyone eats that first, you got no K left. I think that's like from an energy system standpoint, that's what it ends up looking like. Like and maybe that's a great visual to think about the deterioration of energy. And what you can do is if you got your swim cake, that's, one layer, your bike cake, which is, got some pretty solid layers, maybe just sprinkles, no solid, good white icing. Because white icing is the superior icing. But then your run cake is like fully maxed out. I did these like 2.5, 3 hour long runs. Like I'm ready to go. And you got this built up, maxed out, pretty awesome, amazing cake. Well, guess what? From the time you get in the swim, think about the fact that no one's gonna be eating that bare swim cake. They're all gonna be eating out of your run cake. And that's what happens. That's what's happening in the swim. Everybody's eating up that icing cake. By the time you get out of the water, half that run cake's probably already gone. And by the time you hop off the bike, guess what? It's completely annihilated. There's like a few crumbs and like the decorative topping. That's all you got left that you can't eat. All right. So if it's fondant, it might be gone, but other than that, that's all you got left. Now people are like grazing at this icingless, base layer cake that someone didn't finish. And that's what your run's going to look like. And so like, again, you got to put these things together, and there's all different ways to shift things out. Because people have crazy schedules now. Some days are work from home. Some days go in the office. Some weeks are in town. Some weeks are not in town. Like you got to be creative to get in, the volume. And if you got this time, like again, I'm not totally against, because we do it a lot, right? Like if people got other priorities or trying to stay married during Ironman training, but like if I'm trying to get in a lot of bike volume, like give me the Saturday, Sunday. Most people, if you think about how much time they spend training on a Saturday, or excuse me, on a Wednesday, they might get up and go get a run in the morning, then go swim in. Like, give me the double. Give me like an hour and a half tempo run in the morning and an hour easy, run on the treadmill or outside in the evening. I got 2.5 hours. There's my long run for the week. Now I got a whole Sunday to get in extra riding. I'll make Thursday kind of the easier recovery ride, and I'm not completely trashed. Because that's also a thing. Like when you think about your runs and you're doing them on a Sunday, and there's a lot of different ways to like roll through it, but like your Sunday runs could probably be your most fatigued run. You got the whole week and the hard day the day before. It's hard to get in a lot of quality then. And then you're right back to Monday, which is a stressful day for people, and you got to go back to work, and you got this like that doesn't yield a great recovery opportunity. Right? The hardest thing on your body arguably is the long run on Sunday. And you go into it to the most stressful day of the week, right? So you're super fatigued, hardest thing on your body. You do it Sunday, you probably do it too long and too hard. And then you got to go into Monday, which is a hard stress day. So it's limited recovery. Get back up and go to work. And you're like this, how is this maximizing, right? Because your workout's only as good as your ability to recover. If you can't recover, you just did it, and now you're sacrificing like part of the game. And that's just like, that's one of those things you have to think about when you look at like the layers and the stacking of the week is, if you're going to do it, then maybe your next 2 days need to be pretty easy, or if you're going to put hard one in the next 2 or 3 days after that might be, because you're not just recovering from the workout, then you're covering from the one you did 2 days where you didn't fully recover from. So there's a ton of ways to go about it. But, for this type of race, again, like the consistency's got to start from a ways out, because you don't have as much room. You're on course for longer. The longer you're on course, the harder the terrain, the more opportunities for distress, for, energy. And I do, like, I know I harp on the swim probably an annoyingly amount, but like that's again, like I can't, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around, looking at these races and wanting to do your best and completely, neglecting the swim. Again, so if you're training for Wisconsin, like your goal should be to run up the helix, and I'll be there. And our athletes better be running your ass up the helix, even if it's like a small jog. Get those legs moving, get those legs pumping. Because it's also one of the most fun places to watch a race on the North American circuit, right there in the helix. You can see everybody, they slow down. It's like, they're all condensed. But yeah, it's just think through those things. You still got the whole month of August, and for the first week of and stop tapering 5 weeks out. That's just not a small little tangent. Like, dear God, like if you're unless you got like a gigantic amount of fatigue, which you shouldn't, like, can we stop it with the 3-week tapers? Like, you're just purging fitness. Like, you need 10 to 14. Some people would need a week. Especially if you haven't been super consistent, like like your taper should be the length of training the training that you did. There's a direct relationship. Like, and also if you're like and not inconsistent, but if you have a varying schedule, where like you get a lot of training in 1 week and you don't the next. Like you legit don't even need a taper week. Like a taper, you just need like 4 or 5 days. Like we just need to, or you know what, not our athletes, but everybody else, 3.5, 4 weeks minimum. Actually, I'd start tapering now. You should definitely start whittling it down. I would take down all your cycling. I would take down all your swimming, and then I would probably do some 3.5, 4 hour runs. That's probably what you need, coming into race day. Wink, wink. Like that's, go ahead. But no, stop it with the long ass tapers. Like you don't need them. It's just going to make you feel super sluggish and purge. In my opinion, if you don't ask your coach, hey, when are we starting our taper? Then it's too long. Like it should be like, hey, you should always get a good, hey, I thought we would, I kind of assumed we'd be tapering this week. Is that not true? And I'm like, does it look like it's true? Because we're not. Like you need to keep putting it in there. And if you're a durable athlete, these weeks you should be able to check off and adapt and check off and adapt and then be, ready to rock come race day.
Yeah, I just want to quickly go back to something you said just a bit ago about training for the course, training actually to, practice sort of segments and things of that nature. And that just reminded me of, like a lot of times I'll go down to the Wisconsin course and ride, and, people want to go out there and get done and say, oh, that was, 18 miles an hour or whatever. But like, I just think about training all the time because I'll go out there a lot and I've done this forever actually, even back to the trace, if you remember, it was just my thing has always been go up the hill as hard as I can. I don't, because like I'm working my climbing connections to my brain and I'm working that whole system. And that's what I get over it and then I just kind of relax coming down sometimes. But sometimes I'll do it the opposite way. I don't always do it that way, but a lot of times I'll climb in big gear and stuff on some ridiculous hills or just try to make it a much harder gear than I normally would. I know I'm not going to climb in this in the race, but I'm working to get stronger on this hill. And people are always like, oh, no, you got to go up easy. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that in the race. But yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like, I get that. So then sometimes I'll ride up in big gear and then like the next maybe 2 or 3 hills later, I'll ride up in small gear, get over it. And then I'll hammer the down, I'll practice different stuff to, get really acclimated to what's going to happen out there. It's almost like, if all you got is a pool and you're not getting a lot of open water, it's ridiculous. And I hated to do it, but like you need to like just sight a lot while you're swimming in the pool because you got, like you said, man, you got to get your neck and upper body and your shoulder, all that shit ready to do that a lot because you're going to be, maybe you've sighted like 8 times in your whole summer training. And then all of a sudden you're going to sight like 300 in one swim. No, dude, you're just not going to be, you're going to be wondering what the hell's going on. Yeah. So, I mean, that's like a big deal, I think,
Yeah. But I averaged 19.8 on Ruvi.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
And you're like, dude, like,
it's hard like, though. I get people, they want to, I want to see that sometimes too. I want to see that speed. And I think there's a mentality that the more you don't see a speed you want to hold, the harder it's going to be, so you kind of have to push that needle and find those spots when you can. But like I was saying, sometimes I'll just ride out there and look at sections. It's like, all right, let's make this a section like I'm going to race it or whatever. And then, but otherwise, it's like training. That's why I like training in the heat, tougher conditions than you're actually going to race in. Just make the training, more specific to getting stronger.
Right.
Versus always thinking about how fast that run was or that ride or whatever.
Yeah. And I think I love what you said about sighting. We can wrap it up here, but like, and then this is for Wisconsin. So you're like 6 weeks out, a great thing to do for that race is, a couple things. One, starting out now, at the end of, every 200 you do sight that 25, right? So not a lot, like get your body used to it. And then slowly graduate, down to where you're sighting, at the last 25 of every 100, on your, not every session, just like your longer, maybe like a more race, type session of the day. And then, the closer you get to race day, if you can get to open water, do it. And then sight every 4 strokes, just like it would, even if you don't need to. you're going to need to on race day because you ain't going to be alone. You're going to be surrounded.
Mm-hmm.
So do it in open water and do those things and see how you feel, see how the neck feels, see how your wetsuit feels, right? Get those in and see what it feels like. A lot of times sighting feels different in your wetsuit. Everything feels different in your wetsuit. And, do those things. And then the 3 weeks out of race day, do a whole swim. A lot of times that's the only time I'll throw in a continuous swim is maybe 3 to 4 weeks out, do a swim 4K straight. Every other 25 sight, the whole thing. And you'll be surprised again. I think that's also a part of the why you see the slower times swim compared to open water is that sighting takes time for most people, unless you can do it unless you're a really great kind of natural open water swimmer, you have a lot of experience in it and you can sight naturally. One, even if you can sight naturally and it just kind of comes to you and you're real fluid with it, it doesn't interrupt your stroke, it might not change your pace, but it still requires extra level of effort, right? To do something different in the same way or to keep the same speed. But if you're not familiar with it and you have or if you're a person who breathes and then sights, go, man, God help us, right? You're already going to be super slow. You're dragging your feet down, you sight, you breathe. It's not you breathe, you sight. And so you're using extra energy and it's slower. Right? It's I talk to my swimmers all the time about their head position and get your head down and stop swimming with your head up. We got a black line. Stop acting like you're going to get lost. Right? Get your head down a little bit. And so you think about having to raise it up every 4 to 6 strokes. It's a lot. And again, it's one of those very small things that people ignore, yet makes just an enormous difference in how you feel coming out, and it's then but the blame game always starts, from the end to the beginning. Never starts the beginning to the end. And so again, if you're, again, so I love that about, the sighting and going into these races, doing stuff like that. Cause it's those small confidence, practice your sighting, make sure you know how to sight. And if you heard me talking, you're wait, it's sight, then breathe, not breathe, then sight. You're welcome. But go practice it because it is sight, then breathe. It is not breathe, then sight. I mean, that's a huge energy suck right there. Your whole body sinks, your butt sinks. It's not fluid. You look like a trout getting snagged on a fly rod. I mean, it's a lot more efficient to alligator eye and breathe it. I mean, it should be fluid. So practice it. And again, the pool's a great place to practice those kind of things. So especially if you're going to get in and go noodle again, because if you're going to go open water swim, go open water swim. Don't, take the time to drive out to a lake, put on, take the 13 and a half minutes it takes most people to put on a wetsuit, chat for 35 minutes, wrap your safety buoy around your waist, and then go swim 400, tread water, talk, swim 400, tread water and talk, and then come out and be yeah, I got open water swim today. You just played in the lake, right? Can we just call it like it is? You played in the lake. Go get a good, solid, purposeful swim in and be steady with it. Do some pickups with it. If you got 45 minutes or an hour, simulate race day. If you got where you can do 2 loops, swim your first, do a straight up race sim in the water. Come out 300 meters hard because you're not going to do it in race day, but you are. And then settle in for the next 20. This is for maybe if you're going to swim an hour, it's just an example. First 3 minutes out of the gate, solid, probably zone 3. Next 23 minutes, in your timer, settle in, zone 2, cruise. Next 30 minutes, high zone 2, low zone 3. You're not going to swim that in the race, but on a course like Wisconsin, that's the type of energy you're going to be using because you're going to have to navigate around people because of all the congestion. Either going to take a straight line that everyone else is on, have to fight and zigzag your way through and sight a lot more, or are you going to go wide and have to swim extra and more? So that's how you should practice it. And then the last minute and a half to 2 minutes, kick, not as hard as you can, but pick up the kick. Get that blood coming back from it's been accumulating going to your upper body because that's where you've been using it all. If you want your legs to feel even somewhat decent getting in the water, pick up the kick the last minute and a half to 2 minutes. Get the blood going back in there, prevent some, the likelihood of cramping, coming back out. yeah, that's that's a lot of info today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I hope you guys soaked it in and and are going to use it.
Yeah, a lot of info. People probably think this one sucked.
Exactly. Like I feel pretty strong about this one. I feel like we gave a lot of great insight and great input, putting it out there into ether. And this is where, we're going to get just like, I think I'm going to go ahead and put my out of office inbox on my account. You guys are totally wrong. What are you trying to say? You can walk the helix, get your heart rate down. Swimming isn't that important. It's such a small part of the race. You got to do 3-hour long runs. Brick runs are God. What are you talking about? Like, bring it, baby. And I'm going to work on getting a custom shirt for spectating on the helix.
Okay.
I'm not sure what's going to say yet. I'll probably wait to the feedback for this episode. But yeah, good. I just love talking about that. I mean, let us know if you find other podcasts that love Wisconsin as much as we love Wisconsin.
Yeah, that'd be hard to find, I think.
It'll be hard to find. We love it. We'll be there, both of us, in September. But as always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is your one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he's available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. Or if you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. I'll catch you next week.
Yeah, man. See you, dude.
See ya.